Truman Writes.
Welcome back to the Truman Writes podcast. This is your host, Truman. I have a special episode today, episode 6, short stories. I'm going to be reading 3 short stories, one by me, one by my friend Mike, and one by the famed author Barry Hannah. And I can give you a little rundown about each one before I read it and or about the author. So this first one I'll read is about me, and it's called Alone Places. And something I like to do is establish a joint that makes me feel welcome. It's warm, it's inviting, it has good food and or good drinks, preferably both, as what beats, getting a beer that you like, or maybe if you're, ice cold Coca-Cola is your thing, and then a nice meal after I've had a few beers. I like to hop on a meal, and that's just what I like to do. So what happens in these alone places is that I get to just sit, write, think, eat, drink, be merry. Whatever it is that I need to do, it's established alone time, and I'm pretty sure that I wrote this while I was at one of my alone times. And I'm just going to take this one bit out. I don't think I'm going to read, actually, one part of it. I know this doesn't make sense, but I had a little snippet that was me kind of breaking the fourth wall within it. You know what? Whatever I'll do. I'll tell you when it happens, and we'll just see. I don't know. I'm overthinking it maybe, but this one is called Alone Places by me. Shitty small-town coffee, the taste, that carried the town's talk poured into my glass, down my throat with my back up against some cushion that didn't feel like a cushion, but it was still cozy. A warm kind of hole acting as a room. My alone place. Something transcendent from another time, but still very much this one thanks to the people that sit near. I didn't think about what I ate there, I just called out what I knew was tasty enough, especially the same after some poison or herb. There was something about it. Love or lard is the answer to that, but I don't think about the lard part of things when love could be thought about. Walls hung with pictures that meant something to a few someones out there, but I didn't know them. Why would I? Why do I care? It's only because I never see them in here, and I sit here a lot and eat sometimes, but mostly just drink the shit coffee. There's a large man that cooks the stuff and a sign that says something about, quote, don't trust a skinny cook, which I believe because my grandmother wasn't the skinniest lady, but she cooked the best meals because of love and of lard. Most people don't use him, but most people don't see him, but there's a strange way about him when he speaks and yells out the orders in some language that I've had to figure out as a local and not a waiter like I once was. Most of the time you only see his hands, the kind of black and hairy hands that chop, cut, and cook the lovely meals that sit in the window until they are picked up by some other hands that sometimes bring it to me. I like when he yells a little angry, and the nice ladies come rushing because they forgot or were, quote, powdering their nose, as they say. The only time I get to see him is when he comes out from behind the wall to reveal he has to piss, never saying anything or anything like that, because who would want to know the chef has to piss? But if you watch real closely, you'll be able to tell that he's human. And how nice is that? Very. The thing is, I think I've thought about it a lot. I don't always sit there, though. Sometimes I like to sit at the library that has 6 floors. Not the boring ones that only have 1 floor and books all around, like some place that has purpose. I like the space and the books being all over the place. I even like sitting in the chairs I like most with the weird guy looking at me from behind that lamppost that didn't need to be there, as the space was generally well lit. All kinds of humans here and there and leaving and crying and some smelling like ass, but that was just one time I passed a tour of old people who were about to get on the elevator, so I took the stairs. Sitting and writing, or maybe just staring at the lights and the steel beams and wood, a conflict of interest that fascinated me. I'm gonna wait out this dog. It's a real bitch of a dog here. He's always doing that thing, aka barking. Alright, I think they have left the premises. Back into it. A conflict of interest that fascinated me. I could tell there was something about the place. Maybe there was a magic in the air, as they say, or maybe it was just because of the books. It was probably the people that surrounded me. You can usually find the things that you want to see most. You just have to look for it like a library book. I thought about that once. I was in the library, but also a little stoned, as they say. There's usually a walk that happens after these alone places. There are usually two birds together. I can't tell anyone, though, what is in my head. It only makes sense to me. Only on my walks and in my dreams that I can't remember always. A daydream. A fairy tale scheme that lifts and awakens. And then this is when it goes into the fourth wall break. It's italicized. I don't know what it is exactly, but I wrote it down. So I always try to make something out of me and you, cracking my knuckles and fighting to loosen it just a little more because I thought we would work out. I thought we would become and bud into something so magical and true and real and everything in between, like what they say it'll be like. But I'm lusting like I do now and again, even though you aren't here, but it was like that always because we didn't meet each other like that. I thought about it a lot, though. About talking to you at the place we both knew the other could take the one that they loved for those years and still maybe do. But I chose me over you. And for once that felt good because I wanted you to know you could do it too. I always felt love for you and still probably do. And now we're back into the regular piece, or the last bit of this piece. I don't know. Alone places are my saving grace, as I found those places help me escape. They are simply places, simple and true. One has a tree that is lit and made me feel warm one night when I was drinking, and since then it's always been a spot. I moved away from that place, but I still go sometimes. There's live music that plays by these old-timers or timers too old for the young people's bars, but they seem nice enough. Sometimes there are cute girls there that wait on me but don't look me in the eye, so I stop trying to make contact with them and caring about the eye contact. I found myself in a red room there once that was spinning a little because of this coffee that was strong in all kinds of ways. It was colored strangely for an adult beverage and filled my belly, but I don't remember a lot from that night, except the coffee, and I'm sure I thought about this one girl some, but still went about my business. There's another place that I like to go, but only when I can wear shorts too short and dance around because of drugs and cry a little at the sunset. And that is called Alone Places. I think it has some high points. I don't really know about the bit in the middle, the little poem or whatever it was meant to be. I like to just kind of spill it all out and then see what happens, or clean it up afterward, and that was the product. I like reading these longer pieces because the poetry is fun, and I think it gives me a chance to celebrate a lot of different authors that have hit me up or I've asked them to read their work. But this is it gives more of a story. I think you understand a little bit more about the author, however it happens, and I think that's really cool. So this next one is called Grandpa Stories. It's by my friend Mike, who's a developer. Great guy. Really can't say enough good things about him. I will, however, not say any good things about the people talking outside. Please pipe down. Okay, this one is Grandpa Stories. My grandpa used to tell me stories sometimes while I would sit on his knee and bounce. Not really about the bouncing. My grandpa wasn't like that. He told me one time how he was real good at baseball and how he had missed a chance to play in the majors because of Uncle Sam telling him to soldier on a boat. I asked him who Uncle Sam was, and all he would say back was he was on the other side of the family, the asshole side, and that I wouldn't want to meet him. Then he grumbled to himself for a while. When he was done, I asked him how he felt about not being able to play ball anymore. He told me that he still played ball. He told me that he still played ball. It was just on top of the carrier. I asked him what a carrier was, and he told me it was the boat. I told him no way you could play ball in a boat, and I asked him if a lot of balls went over this side. He said that more of the bats did because the guys would string line through them and fish to pass the time, but the fish were so big out there that they pulled the bats off the boat and into the water. After a while, they had to hit with one of the gimp's fake legs, he said. What's a gimp? I asked. He told me to watch Pulp Fiction. I tried, but my mom wouldn't let me. I would sit and have talks with my grandpa sometimes. Most of the time we'd be out back so that he could say whatever he wanted without Grandma hearing. I would ask him about things and he would tell me what he knew. I asked him one time about what was the stuff that the ball players spit out of their mouths all the time. He told me it was called chew. He didn't have any of that, he said, but he had dip. I asked him what dip was and he said it was basically the same. It just gave you more of a buzz. Like a bee, I asked. Sure, he said, and then took a can out of his pocket. It had a bear on it or something. What's that? I asked him. Dip, he said, and then opened the can and pinched something inside, and then he reached over and pulled my cheek and put some brown stuff in my mouth in between my lip and my teeth. He told me not to swallow anything as long as I had the brown stuff in. I said, okay. The brown stuff tasted like the Wrigley's double mint gum for a while. Then I got a headache and had to sit down. Then I threw up. The brown stuff came out, so I got to swallow. The brown stuff came out, so I got to swallow after that. I looked at my grandpa, and he was looking at his watch. 15 minutes, he said. Good for your first dip. I used to know guys that didn't go 10 minutes without throwing up their first time, he said. You did good, son. I smiled at him when he said that, but then I threw up again right after. Then he called out Martha and had my grandma clean me up. Blamed it on her cooking. I never chewed Wrigley's double mint again after that. I would never really have talks with my grandma about anything because she would make torpedo comments, my mom said. Like she told my mom that she had beautiful broad shoulders, and then my mom would hunch over at the dinner table to not make her shoulders beautiful and broad. I would ask my grandpa about Grandma, and most of the time he had something to say about her cooking, mostly bad things. One of the times it wasn't about cooking, he told me how he had trouble sleeping in his bed that night because she was farting under the covers so much. I started laughing really loud, but he told me to stop and that farts aren't funny, especially when they keep me up at night, he said, and began grumbling to himself like he did with Uncle Sam. Maybe Uncle Sam farted a lot, I thought to myself, and that's why I didn't want to meet him. Later on, I went into my grandpa's room and lifted up the sheets to check if it smelled like fart. Before I smelled anything, my grandma came in and asked me what I was doing. I told her I was saying my prayers. She told me I was such a good grandson and patted me on the head a couple times and then hugged me. In the middle of the hug, she squeaked out a fart and I pinched my nose with one hand to keep from smelling it, but it still made my eyes water. After she let me go, we both started walking out of the room and she farted again in front of me and I walked into it from behind her. Oh, God. Okay, sorry. I told my grandpa about it and he said that was called crop dusting. I asked my grandma what crop dusting was, and she said it was something about planes. After that, whenever I needed a fart over there, I started running around her in circles with my arms out like wings and making airplane noises so she wouldn't hear it. She would ask me what I was doing, and I would tell her she would see in a minute. Pfft, that would teach her and her planes. When I was old enough to play ball on the bigger fields, my grandpa started talking to me more about pressing issues like how to throw different pitches and how to talk to girls and things. He told me if I liked a girl, I should go up to her and look her in the eye and tell her she looked pretty. He also told me to stay away from the sluts. I asked him what sluts were. He told me that he would show me, then tried to take me to a strip club, but my mom wouldn't let him. A time after that, I walked up to a girl I liked and looked her in the eye, but when I looked at her in the eye, I got nervous and forgot what to say, so I ended up just standing there and smiling at her. She wasn't smiling back. She ended up being my buddy's first kiss a couple weeks after that. I didn't want to tell Grandpa what happened, though, because he'd probably call me a pansy or a ladyboy or something. I ended up telling him, though, and he called me a pussy. I asked him what a pussy was. He told me to ask Grandma. She told me it was a cat. I told Grandpa what she told me. Oh, sorry. I told Grandpa what she told me, and he said it's not a cat, and then told me what it really was. I said okay, and I didn't know what to do next. Then he offered me some dip, and I got out of there. I was watching TV over at his house one time with my sister, and my grandpa came over and started teaching me how to throw some pitch. I forgot which one because I was still halfway watching the TV. He said, "Now you try," and tossed me the ball, but I missed it because of the TV, and it hit off my knee and rolled back toward him on the carpet. He bent over to pick it up, and as he was going down, he farted, and I didn't realize it. Or he farted and didn't realize it. I started laughing really loud for a second, and then I realized that he didn't know he farted, so I made it look like I was laughing at the TV. He got really mad about me watching the TV instead of him, and then stormed out of the room grumbling. I knew who Uncle Sam was at this point. When I got to be almost out of middle school, my grandpa was having some health issues. I forget what. We would have talks about it, and he would tell me not to smoke and things like that. I never smoked, I told him. Good, he said. He would tell me about his old college days back at Texas Tech and how he ran around getting tail all the time before he met Grandma. I really didn't have much to say about it because it was pretty awkward, but I listened to his stories anyway. Some of them are real vulgar too. I remember wondering if I would ever tell anybody if I did stuff like that in college. He finished one of the really vulgar ones, and we sat there for a while silent. I looked over at him and asked him when the last time he got some. He told me to go check the sheets on his bed and then tell him when that was. I went into the bedroom and I bent over and was lifting up the covers when my grandma walked in. She asked me what I was doing. I said praying. She told me I was such a good grandson and patted me on the head a couple times and then hugged me. It was weird. She didn't let me near the bed for the rest of the day. My grandpa told me he worked for Goodyear for like 50 years. He also said something about being married to my grandma that long, too. I remember we had a 50th anniversary party for them, and my mom made a huge PowerPoint presentation with pictures like from the 40s and a bunch of Frank Sinatra playing and stuff. Grandma was really happy. Grandpa was all right with it. I asked him about it later, and he said the cake was good. Grandpa used to tell me how he loved playing golf. He never used to take me with him, though. I asked him about it, and he said I would suck and slow everybody down. I told him that he sucked and he slowed everybody down. Oh, God. Then he took me one time and I sucked and slowed everybody down. He shot a 77. I stopped counting mine after 100. One time we were talking. He told me he wasn't going to see me for a while because of a Goodyear buddy of his lived in Florida on a golf course, and he had invited him to come down for a week or two, and that he was going to go. He left with his club and his Ralph Polos to the airport, and I didn't see him for a while. I found out a little later that he had got drunk with his buddy down there and attempted to hold up a Caddyshack for tip money with one of his clubs. Since it was his first offense, he only got like 6 months with parole. When he got back, he told me a story about his parole officer being so fat he couldn't see his feet, and that every time he would call him, he would make a joke about it. Grandma left him before he got back, said something like it made her look bad to be married to a felon. Grandpa wasn't really all right with it. Grandpa took up flying to pass the time. He told me it was a great way to leave all the bullshit behind. He told me to never fly drunk. I never have, I told him. Good, he said. He would go on week-long trips around to different places. He usually brought a guy with him, so if he passed out or something, he wouldn't die alone, he said. One time he left and I didn't see him for like 3 weeks, so I drove down to the small airport that he flew from to check it out. I didn't see his plane, so I went into the airport and started asking anybody in a pilot uniform if they'd seen or heard from my grandpa. I found one guy that said he had been his radio man on the ground and brought me into a lounge somewhere and sat me down. I asked him where my grandpa was, and he told me that my grandpa had decided to fly one night a couple weeks ago, just out of the blue. Your grandpa had already gotten in the plane before I knew what was going on, he said. He just took off, and when I asked him where he was going, he told me that I would see in a minute. He just kept gaining and gaining altitude when he was getting to be too high. I asked him again where he was going. He yelled, "I'm going all the way," and then started laughing really loud. It sounded like he was drunk. After that, the radio went dark. In the days following, I listened to every news report, every radio broadcast, anything to catch a word about him. I ended up hearing on the news one night that they had detected an aircraft in orbit that they thought was alien or something. But when they took a picture of the aircraft, they found it was only an old man in a propeller plane. They said that they were amazed it was in orbit and that they had no idea how it had gotten there. It was funny, though, because they didn't actually show any pictures of the plane on the news. Apparently, the old man had taped all of his fingers down except the middle one and strapped it up so they could see it in the picture. That sounds like Grandpa. The funeral was pretty awkward. Nobody knew what happened. They hadn't gotten the body out of space yet, so we didn't even have anything to bury when he went out to the cemetery. I think somebody had scrounged up some ashes and put them in an urn or something. During the service, the funeral guy asked if anybody wanted to speak. Grandma went up to the front and started talking. Grandma did. While she was talking, she farted, and I heard it pretty well and busted out laughing really loud. People started looking at me and stuff, but I couldn't stop. I was just laughing and laughing at her, a little bit because of the fart, but mostly because of the irony that she was up in the front talking at Grandpa's funeral. I stopped only after my mom elbowed me in the stomach. Grandma went back to her seat. The whole thing was pretty awkward. I remember one of the stories Grandpa told me about playing ball in the carrier. He had told me it was dark and they were playing with the lights on. He was pitching and it was the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs, bases loaded, and his buddy came up to the plate smiling and pointed the bat towards the air above the far edge of the boat, calling his shot. Grandpa threw the pitch and his buddy hit it so far that it was still going up when it crossed into the darkness. He said he listened for a splash, but he never heard one. Said it was hit so far it probably went into space. Said it was the only pitch he would have ever taken back. I've never felt zero gravity. I wonder what it took to whisper the words Martha, Martha, Martha. That is Grandpa's Stories. That is just a wild story, honestly. I read this back when we were in college together, or just after, and it honestly blew my mind. I think it's hilarious. I think it's a very authentic and genuine story, and even though you don't really know for certain if he did die in space with his middle fingers up, and you're like, that guy, that's how he went, and that's what I'm going to believe. And I don't care if it seems, I was going to say too alien, but that's like a space pun, but it's what you want your grandpa to be, you know? And so, thanks, Mike, for letting me read that. This one is called Coming Close to Donna by Barry Hannah. And this is in his book, Airships. And I'll read a little bit about Barry Hannah and then this book specifically. He's the author of 11 other books at this current publishing time. I'm not sure. Maybe that's it. But he won the Arnold Gingrich Short Fiction Award for this book, Airships. And when it was published, it was introduced to readers to a literary New South, a region that grappled fiercely with the legacy of the Civil War and a present-day cauldron of friendship and violence, drinking and fishing, sex, love, and a virtuistic devotion to storytelling. It is now recognized by writers and readers everywhere as one of the most important and influential works of short fiction and Southern writing in recent years. All right, let's get to it. Coming Close to Donna. This one is not too terribly long, and we'll close it out. Fist fight on the old cemetery. Both of them want Donna. Square off, and Donna and I watch from the Lincoln convertible. I'm neutral. I wear sharp clothes, and everybody thinks I'm a fag, though it's not true. The truth is, I'm not all that crazy about Donna, that's all, and I tend to be a sissy of voice. Never had a chance otherwise. Raised by a dreadfully vocal old aunt after my parents were killed by vicious homosexuals in Panama City. Further, I am fat. I've got fat ankles going into my suede boots. I ask her, "Say, what do you think about that, Donna? Are you going to be whoever wins girlfriend?" "Why not? They're both cute," she says. Her big lips are moist. She starts taking her sweater off. When it comes off, I see she's got great humpers in her bra. There's a nice brown valley of hair between them. "I can't lose," she says. Then she takes off her shoes and her skirt. There's extra hair on her thighs near her panty rim. Out in the cemetery, the guys are knocking the spunk out of each other's cheeks. Bare, Donna's feet are red and not handsome around the toes. She has some serious bunions from her weird shoes, even at 18. My age is 20. I tried to go to college but couldn't sit in the seats long enough to learn anything. Plus, I hated English composition, where you had to correct your phrases. They cast me out like so much waste paper. The junior college system in California is tough, so I went back home. I like to wear smart clothes and walk up and down Sunset Strip. That will show them. By now, Donna is naked. The boys, Hank and Ken, are still battering each other out in the cemetery. I look away from the brutal fight and from Donna's nakedness. If I were a father, I couldn't conceive of this from my daughter. Warm me up, Vince. Do me. Or are you really a fag like they say? Not that much, I say. I lost my virginity. It was like swimming in a warm, oily room. Rather pleasant, but I couldn't finish. I thought about the creases in my outfit. Come in me, you fag, says she. Don't hurt my feelings. I want a fag to come in me. Oh, you pornographic witch, I can't, says I. Oh, okay. She stands up, nude as an oyster. We look over at the fight in the cemetery. When she had clothes on, she wasn't too much to look at. But naked, she is a vision. She has an urgent body that makes you forget the crooked nose. Her hair is dyed pink, but her organ hair isn't. We watch Hank and Ken slugging each other. They are her age, and both of them are on the swimming team. Something is wrong. They are too serious. They keep pounding each other in the face past what a human could take. Donna falls on her knees in the green tufted grass. She faints. Her body is the color of an egg. She fainted supine, titties and hair upward. The boys are hitting to kill. They're not fooling around. I go ahead in my smart bell-bottom cuff trousers. By the time I reach them, they are both on the ground. Their scalps are cold. They are both dead. This is awful. They're dead, I tell Donna, whose eyes are closed. What? She says. They killed each other, says I. Touch me, she says. Make me know I'm here. I thrust my hand to her organ. What do we do? Says I. She goes to the two bodies and is absorbed in a tender, unnatural act over the blue jeans of Hank and Ken. In former days, these boys had sung a pretty fine duet in their rock band. I can't make anybody come. I'm no good, she says. Don't be silly, I say. They're dead. Let's get out of here. I can't just get out of here. They were my sweethearts, she screams. Do me right now, Vince. It's the only thing that makes sense. Well, I flung in and tried. A half-year later, I saw her in Hooper's in the pizza parlor. I asked her how it was going. She was gone on heroin. The drug had made her prettier for a while. Her eyes were wise and wide, all black, but she knew nothing except desperation. Vince, she said, if you come lay your joint in me, I wouldn't be lost anymore. You're the only one of the old crowd. Screw me and I could get back to my old neighborhood. I took her in my overcoat, and when I joined her in the street in black of huge garbage cans, she kept asking, tell me where it is, the cemetery. At that moment, I was high on cocaine from a rich woman's party. But I drove her, that is, took a taxi to the cemetery where her lovers are dead. She knelt at the stones for a while. Then I noted she was stripping off. Pretty soon she was naked again. Climb me, mount me, fight for me, fuck me, she screamed. I picked up a neighboring tombstone with great effort. It was an old thing, perhaps going back to the 19th century. I crushed her head with it. Then I fled right out of there. Some of us are made to live for a long time, others for a short time. Donna wanted what she wanted. I gave it to her. Ooh, that was just that just has so much packed into so little. And I especially love the character Donna, and Hank and Ken are pretty fun to think about as well. Barry Hannah's writing is a lot like that. Summed up, that's a nice picture of Barry Hannah as an author. And I recommend Airships. It's packed with short stories. Some of them are just woof. You know what I'm saying? And I think I'm just going to leave it there. Just leave it feeling weird. But I'm feeling okay. I especially liked reading Grandpa stories to you guys. That's a fun one. Cracks me up. If you have anything to submit, Hit me up on Instagram at Truman Writes. That's TrumanRights. Truman Writes. And that does it for me. I'll see you next time.
Truman Writes.